Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. The southern African nation of Zambia is mourning the death of President Michael Sata, who died late Tuesday in London. Mr. Sata had been undergoing treatment in the British capital for an undisclosed illness. He was 77. President Sata's health had been a concern since June after he traveled to Israel for medical treatment and then did not make any public appearances for 3 months. Mr. Sata had led Zambia since winning an election in 2011 that ended the 20-year rule of the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy Party. Sata pledged to fight corruption and help Zambia's poor, while also working to improve working conditions at mines in Africa's second biggest copper-producing country. Mr. Sata was known for his sharp wit and fiery speeches, which earned him the nickname King Cobra. Zambian Vice President Guy Scott has been named the interim leader. Defense Minister Edgar Lungu says the country will hold a presidential election to choose a permanent successor to Sata within 3 months. Well, Africa 54's Paul Ndiho recently returned from Zambia, and he joins us now. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Vince. How are you?
I'm fine. Now, you spent some time in Zambia at a time when actually the president was absent from the country. What was the mood like in the country?
It was kind of a mixed feeling. On the streets, people were talking about what could happen when the president eventually passes on. Some people were also saying that, you know what, he's going to recover. And pretty much most people didn't know what was really happening behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Which is very typical in African nations, that people don't really know what's happening to the president. Now, it so happened that actually, by coincidence, among the things you did is visit a very interesting place. Can you just share that with us?
Yes, I happened to be at the mausoleum where all the presidents are sitting, and people who have died in office, especially the Zambian presidents, are buried or are going to be buried. For example, there is this place in the heart of Lusaka called the National Burial Site for the presidents of Zambia. It's right in front of the army headquarters. So that's where I suspect they are going to bury President Sata.
Was there any conversation of an anticipated passing on of the president? Were they kind of in a preparatory mode?
It's ironic that you say that because as I was talking to one of the curators of the mausoleum, we talked about the potential death of President Sata. And he said, you know what, if he dies, his burial site is going to be right here. This is where they're going to bury him. They've already buried their former President Levi Mwanawasa, Chiluba, who also died recently. They buried him there. So all the other presidents who who will serve as Zambia's presidents, if they die, they will be buried there.
It's kind of notable that since President Kaunda, the first president after independence of that country from the British, everybody other than I think one has died. I mean, President Kaunda is alive, and only one former president.
Lupia Banda is also alive.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things they talk about these leaders, especially for the great Kenneth Kaunda, they say that this man is still in a very good, healthy condition. He exercises every day for about 2 hours. Maybe that's one of the reasons why he's still alive today.
Yes. And very quickly, in terms of the political kind of jostling and kind of debates, what is the situation like? Zambia is known to be very peaceful, but how is it now?
That's right, indeed. As of today, I think they announced that Vice President Scott has taken over as acting president. Generally, Zambians are very, very peaceful people. When they were even talking about, before the death, I interacted with a lot of people on the streets, in bars, and they were talking about how there's going to be a seamless transition when President Sata passes on.
And it so happened that actually just about this time, the Zambians had been working on a new constitutional draft, and that is, it's been presented actually recently. You did a story on that. Yeah,
that's right, Vincent. Zambian government has released its final draft constitution to the public as Zambians reflect on 50 years of freedom from colonial rule. The Southern African nation has been fairly stable for most of its post-independence, with an economy recently classified by the World Bank as lower middle income. Zambia's ruling party, the Patriotic Front, says it's committed to giving Zambians a people-driven constitution, and it remains committed to giving the Zambians a constitution that will stand the test of time. Andrew Ntewewe, the president of the Young African Leaders Initiative, whose organization has been pushing for reforms, has played an important role in the draft constitution process. He says historically, anytime Zambians want to come up with a constitution, it has to do with elections.
We are not looking for a constitution simply for the 2016 elections. We believe that elections are very important because they form the bedrock of democratic governance. But elections alone are not the entire constitution. So they're simply a component of the constitution.
Plans to overhaul the constitution were announced shortly after Michael Sata was elected president in 2011, as part of a series of steps in his top-to-bottom review of the country's policies. However, critics accuse the government of deliberately stalling the process in the interests of those in power. Others say the constitutional reform process has been slow to gather momentum because of a lack of consensus building from the various stakeholders.
I want to believe that as much as elections are very important, we can do this process without political expediency. We can do this process by seeking stakeholder involvement and consensus building.
In recent years, Zambia has enjoyed political stability and has an annual economic growth rate of 7%. The World Bank now classifies it as a lower middle-income nation rather than a low income, meaning its gross national income per person has risen above $1,000. But Africa's second-largest copper producer, home to 14.5 million people, is still struggling with poverty and high unemployment. Zila Milupi, a social entrepreneur and co-founder of a non-profit called Winners Circle, says young Zambians have a role to play in solving the unemployment problem.
If young people take the bull by the horns and start to believe actually in the potential that they have, if we start to be more open-minded and if we start to foster creativity and risk-taking, if we make deliberate efforts to do those things and to really cultivate an entrepreneurship culture, I think that that really could be a significant growth sector for Zambia.
To get a sense of what Zambians think about their 50th independence anniversary, I spoke to a couple of residents on the streets of the capital, Lusaka.
The economy has changed. We have developed to a certain extent, but we have not reached where we are supposed to be.
We have enjoyed peace, we've enjoyed harmony, we've enjoyed a lot of good things.
President Michael Sata's death comes at a time when the Southern African nation is celebrating 50 years of independence. Meanwhile, Zambia's sometimes rocky relationship with China is now steadily growing. A drive through Lusaka and other cities shows a country on the move, with huge Chinese infrastructure projects spurring development.
Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have to say, excellent reporting.